Let me tell you something about the most dangerous people in the world. They're not loud. They don't brag. They sit quietly across from you at the dinner table, paying your bills, ironing your shirts, loving you with everything they have, and you never once stop to wonder why someone that patient chose you. Liam Sterling never wondered. Not once in 7 years, and that's exactly how he lost everything. It was a Thursday evening in July. Manhattan was doing that thing it does in summer, pressing its hot, wet hand against your chest until you can barely breathe. But inside the apartment on West 82nd Street, the air was different. Colder. The kind of cold that has nothing to do with temperature. Emily was at the kitchen sink, hands raw, knuckles pink from scrubbing a cast-iron pot she'd been seasoning for years. She could see Liam in the living room through the doorway, sitting on the couch like a king on a borrowed throne, adjusting a silk tie that cost more than every piece of clothing she owned combined. She'd bought him that tie. He didn't remember. "We need to talk," he said. Didn't look up from his phone when he said it either. Now, pay attention to that, because how a person delivers bad news tells you everything about who they really are. A man with a spine looks you in the eye. A coward looks at his phone. "Dinner's almost ready," Emily said, wiping her hands on her apron. "I made that roast you like." "I'm not eating." He stood up. God, he was handsome. That sharp jaw, those cold, intelligent eyes. Wall Street handsome. The kind of face that gets promoted not because it's brilliant, but because it looks brilliant. He'd just made senior vice president at Vanguard Global, a firm that managed more money than some countries, and it had infected him. Success is a drug, honey. Yes. And Liam had been mainlining it for months. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a fat manila envelope, and slapped it on the granite counter like he was serving her a warrant. "I'm filing for divorce." The refrigerator hummed. That was the only sound in the apartment for about 5 full seconds. 5 seconds might not seem long, but stand in a silent room after someone destroys your life and count to 5. It's an eternity. "Why?" Emily whispered. "Is it stress? We can do counseling. I know that new client has been—" He laughed. And it wasn't a laugh that had any warmth in it. It was the sound of a door slamming shut. "It's not stress, Emily. It's you." He looked her up and down. The faded jeans, the plain t-shirt from a 3-pack, the apron with flour on it. He looked at her the way you'd look at furniture you've outgrown. "I'm a VP now. I sit across from senators. I pitch to billionaires. And then I come home to this." He waved his hand at her like she was a mess he was tired of cleaning up. "I supported you," she said, voice cracking now. "When you had nothing, Liam. I worked doubles at the diner for 6 years to pay off your student loans. I put you through business school." "That's the problem." He straightened his cuffs. "You remind me of when I was nothing. You're small, Emily. No ambition. You clip coupons. You ride the subway. I need someone who fits my life now. Someone who walks into a room and the room notices." He paused. "Let the silence do its damage. Someone like Jessica. Now. Let me tell you about Jessica Vance, 24 years old, daughter of Marcus Vance, the Texas oil tycoon, the kind of woman who wears diamonds to the grocery store and thinks that makes her interesting. Liam had been working late with the Vance account for months. Working late? Sure. "You're leaving me for a client?" Emily's voice went quiet. Not weak quiet. Something else. "I'm leaving you for my future," Liam corrected, like he was explaining something obvious to someone slow. "I'm being generous. Keep the Honda. But I need you out by Friday. Jessica's moving in." "This is my home. It's in my name. Check the papers. You just signed as a witness when I bought it. You really should read things before you sign them, Emily." He checked his Rolex. "Have your stuff packed. Don't make a scene. And stay away from the Vanguard Gala next week. It's black tie for the elite. Security already has your photo. If you show up trying to beg for alimony, they'll throw you out on the sidewalk." He walked out without looking back. Didn't even close the door gently. Emily stood there, alone. The roast was still in the oven. The apartment still smelled like rosemary and home. And just like that, 7 years of love had been wadded up and tossed in the trash by a man who thought he'd outgrown the only person who ever truly had his back. She looked down at the divorce papers. Then she touched the one piece of jewelry she ever wore, a small silver locket around her neck. She opened it. Inside was a tiny faded crest, a lion, a shield. Naive, she whispered to the empty apartment. But she wasn't talking to herself. She was talking to him. She picked up her phone. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call her best friend. She dialed an international number, one she hadn't used in a very long time. 2 rings. Royal Household, Chief of Staff speaking. Arthur. Her voice changed. The softness evaporated. What replaced it was something ancient, something iron. It's me. Prepare the jet. And tell grandfather I'm finally accepting the invitation to the Vanguard Gala. She hung up. See, here's what Liam didn't know. Here's what he never once bothered to ask in 7 years of marriage. Emily's family didn't farm the land. They owned it, all of it. The hills, the vineyards, the castles, the sovereign wealth fund, the mineral rights, the centuries-old bloodline that stretched back further than America itself. Emily wasn't some broke girl from the countryside. She was the sole heir to the Duchy of Valoria. And Liam? Liam had just filed for divorce from a future queen. He wanted a woman who could command a room. Oh, sweetheart. He was about to get exactly what he asked for. Friday came fast. Emily didn't fight him, didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't hire a lawyer to stall. She packed 7 years of her life into 3 cardboard boxes and waited by the door like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. That should have been Liam's first clue. When someone who loves you that deeply doesn't fight, they're not surrendering. They're reloading. He showed up that afternoon with Jessica on his arm like a shiny new accessory. Jessica walked in wearing red heels that clicked on the hardwood like little gunshots. She looked around the apartment Emily had turned into a home, and wrinkled her nose like she'd stepped in something. "Oh, you're still here?" Jessica said. "Liam, babe, I thought you said the help would be gone by noon." Liam laughed, wrapped his arm around Jessica's waist. "She's just slow, Jess. You know how she is." Jessica spotted a ceramic mug on the counter. One Emily had hand-painted years ago, back when they were happy, back when Liam used to drink coffee from it every morning and say it was his favorite thing in the apartment. "Ugh, tacky." Jessica picked it up, held it out like it was dirty. Then she dropped it. It shattered across the kitchen floor. "Oops," Jessica shrugged. "We're renovating anyway. I want everything marble." Emily looked at the broken pieces. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. She just looked at Liam with something he'd never seen in her eyes before. Not sadness, not anger, certainty. "You think you know who I am," Emily said quietly. "But in 7 years you never once asked about my family. You never asked about Europe. You just assumed I was poor because I didn't spend money." "Because you have no money," Liam snapped. "Your parents are farmers." "I said they worked the land," Emily corrected. "I never said they were farmers." He pointed at the door. "Get out. And don't you dare show your face at the gala. Security has your picture." Emily picked up her last box, looked him dead in the eye. "Enjoy the apartment, Liam. I hope it was worth it." She walked out, down the hallway, into the elevator. She could hear Jessica's laughter echoing behind her. "She's pathetic, Liam. How did you survive 7 years with that little mouse?" The elevator doors closed. Emily stepped outside into the rain, but she didn't walk toward the old Honda Civic parked on the street. Instead, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows rolled up to the curb. A man in a dark suit stepped out, opened an umbrella, and held the door for her. "Your Highness," he said, bowing his head. "No titles yet, Thomas," Emily said, sliding inside. "Not until Saturday." Upstairs, Liam was pouring champagne, completely unaware that he hadn't just lost his wife. He'd declared war on a woman whose family had been winning wars since before his country existed. Saturday night, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Vanguard Global Gala. This was the night Liam Sterling had been building toward his entire career. The guest list was a who's who of senators, billionaires, and media moguls. And somewhere in that crowd was a royal proxy from the Duchy of Valoria, the key to a trade deal worth billions. Liam stepped out of a rented Rolls-Royce looking like a magazine cover. Jessica was next to him in a gold sequined dress cut too low and hemmed too high. Expensive? Absolutely. Classy? Not even close. She looked like a trophy. And that's exactly what Liam wanted. A shiny thing on his arm to prove he'd arrived. Robert Sterling, the CEO, met them inside looking like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days. The Valoran delegation just pulled up. We don't know who the proxy is. High-level security protocols. Listen to me. Do not speak unless spoken to. And keep Jessica quiet. My father owns half of Texas, Jessica started. And these people own half of Europe's debt, Robert snapped. Shut up. Then the room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that starts at the door and rolls through a crowd like a wave, turning every head, killing every conversation. The kind of silence that only happens when real, undeniable power walks into a room. The doors opened. 6 security guards entered first. Then Arthur in a tuxedo with a sash across his chest. And then her. Emily stood at the top of the stairs like she'd been born there, 6 feet tall in heels, spine straight, chin high. The midnight blue Dior gown moved around her like water, and around her neck, the Valoran star. Diamonds and sapphires that hadn't been seen in public since 1968. A necklace worth more than Liam's entire building. She wore a diamond tiara in her dark hair, long silk gloves, and a gaze that could stop your heart. The crowd gasped. Whispers rippled like electricity. Is that... Look at those diamonds. That's the Valoran crest. Liam's champagne glass froze halfway to his mouth. His brain short-circuited. Because the woman descending those stairs, the woman senators were bowing to, the woman billionaires were stepping aside for, had his ex-wife's face. Who is that? Jessica hissed. Why is everyone staring? Her dress isn't even that revealing. That's... Liam's mouth went dry. That looks like Emily. Jessica cackled. Your maid? Liam, please. That woman is wearing $10 million around her neck. Your ex-wife clipped coupons for tuna. But Robert Sterling had gone white. Ghost white. Oh my God, he breathed. That's Her Royal Highness, Princess Emily of Valoria, the Grand Duke's granddaughter. He turned to Liam with horror in his eyes. She's the proxy. She's the one we need to close the deal. Emily reached the bottom of the stairs. She didn't head for the VIP lounge. She didn't stop to mingle. She walked straight across the marble floor, security flanking her, the crowd parting like water, and she stopped 5 feet in front of Liam. Every phone in the room was pointed at them. Hello, Liam, she said. Calm, clear. The acoustics carried her voice to every corner. This wasn't the woman who scrubbed pots in an apron. This was a ruler. Emily, he choked. What? You can't be here. Security! This woman is crashing the party. She's my ex-wife. Jessica jumped in. Yeah, get out! Who did you sleep with to get that necklace? The gasp from the crowd was audible. Arthur stepped forward, face burning. You will address Her Royal Highness with respect. Emily raised one hand. Silenced the room. I didn't crash the party, Liam. She let the words land. I own the party. She turned to Robert. If you'd done your due diligence, you'd know the Valoran Sovereign Fund acquired a controlling interest in Vanguard Global this morning. She paused. Let it sink in. I'm not just the client. As of today, I am the chairwoman of the board. Liam's knees buckled. Actually buckled. He grabbed Jessica's shoulder to stay upright. You're poor, he stammered. You worked at a diner. I worked at a diner because I refused to touch my trust fund until I found a man who loved me for me. Her voice didn't waver. I gave you 7 years. I cooked your meals. I paid your loans. I ironed your shirts when you were a junior analyst making nothing. And the second you tasted success, you threw me away because you thought I didn't fit your new life. She looked him up and down, slowly. You wanted a woman who commands a room, a woman with a title. She spread her arms, just barely. Well, here I am. She turned to Robert. First order of business. This man is fired, effective immediately. Agreed, Robert said without hesitation. Liam, badge, phone, now. You can't. I'm the VP. I brought in the Vance account. Jessica stepped away from him like he was contagious. My daddy doesn't do business with unemployed losers. Consider the account pulled. Emily snapped her fingers. 2 guards stepped forward, took Liam by the arms, and dragged him backward across the marble floor. His heels squeaked against the stone. He was screaming her name the whole way out. Emily didn't turn around. She raised her champagne glass to the stunned room. I apologize for the disturbance. Please, enjoy the evening. Drinks are on me. The room exploded in applause, and outside, in the pouring rain, Liam Sterling stood on the sidewalk in a $5,000 tuxedo with no phone, no job, no wife, and no ride home. He started walking toward the subway. But this story isn't over. Because Liam wasn't the kind of man who stays down. And somewhere in the darkness, a silver Bentley was pulling up beside him, carrying a man with enough money and enough rage to burn everything down. The Bentley smelled like old cigars and bad intentions. Liam sat dripping on the cream leather seats, shivering in his ruined tuxedo, staring at the man across from him. Marcus Vance. 70 years old, built like a retired linebacker, with eyes like 2 chips of flint. This was a man who'd built an oil empire by crushing anyone who got in his way, and he ran his family the exact same way. Jessica sat next to her father, arms crossed, refusing to look at Liam. 20 minutes ago, she'd been calling him babe. Funny how fast the wind changes when the money disappears. You humiliated my daughter, Vance growled. I should throw you out of this moving car. It was Emily, Liam sputtered. She set me up. She's a fraud, Marcus. She lied for 7 years. She's a princess, Vance corrected, and she now controls the company that manages 20% of my portfolio. But here's the thing about men like Marcus Vance. They don't care about pride when money is on the table. And his lawyer, a quiet man in the front seat named Jenkins, had just whispered something that changed the temperature in that car completely. New York state law, Jenkins said flatly. If a spouse hides assets during a marriage, the court can invalidate the entire divorce. In extreme cases, the aggrieved party gets everything. Vance smiled. It was the ugliest smile Liam had ever seen. You filed for divorce thinking she had nothing, Vance said slowly. But she had billions, hidden billions. If we prove she deliberately deceived you, you could be entitled to half of it all, half the trust, half of Vanguard. The greed hit Liam like a drug. $500 million. Maybe more. He wouldn't just bounce back. He'd be untouchable. I have proof, Liam said, leaning forward, eyes wild. Texts where she said we couldn't afford vacation. Emails about grocery budgets. 7 years of her pretending to be broke. It's all on my laptop. Vance snapped his fingers. Jenkins, wake up the legal team. I want a fraud suit filed by Monday morning. We're going to freeze her assets before she even warms the chairman's chair. He looked at Liam with zero warmth. You're my dog in this fight, Sterling. But if you screw it up, I won't just ruin you. I'll bury you so deep you'll need a shovel to find hell. Liam nodded like a man who'd just been handed a lifeline. He thought he was back in the game. He had no idea he was walking into a trap that had been set 5 years ago. Tuesday morning, 50th floor, the law offices of Vance, Reed, and Cromwell. On one side of a 20-foot mahogany table, Liam, Marcus Vance, and 4 of the most expensive attorneys in the country. Mountains of evidence. Hundreds of pages of texts and emails, a bulletproof fraud case or so they thought. On the other side, Emily, alone, just her and Arthur, with a single slim leather portfolio on the table. She wore a cream business suit, no diamonds, no tiara, just the silver locket. She looked like she'd wandered into the wrong meeting, but her eyes were a different story. Vance's lead attorney slid the evidence across the table. Your Highness, we have clear proof that you systematically misrepresented your financial status for 7 years. We're prepared to take this before a judge, unless you'd prefer to settle. $50 million and Mr. Sterling gets his position back. Liam couldn't help himself. You played the poor little match girl, Emily. The judge is going to love this. Emily didn't touch the papers. She just looked at him. Then she said something that made the air leave the room. Do you know the most important lesson in finance, Liam? Don't spend what you don't have, he sneered. No. She almost smiled. Read the fine print. Arthur opened the portfolio. Inside was a single piece of paper. Old, yellowed slightly. Compared to the mountain of documents on Vance's side, it looked like nothing. But it was everything. Arthur slid it across the table. Liam looked down and recognized his own sloppy signature at the bottom. His stomach dropped before his brain even caught up. This is the loan consolidation paperwork from 5 years ago, Emily said calmly. You signed it on a Tuesday night before going out with your friends. You didn't read it. You never read anything. Arthur adjusted his glasses and read aloud. His voice was steady as stone. The undersigned borrower acknowledges that by accepting funds drawn from the royal treasury of Valoria, they enter into a binding agreement under the Valoran Royal Marriage Act of 1712. Any spouse marrying into the royal line who is not of noble blood hereby waives all claims, present and future, to any royal assets, titles, or estates in the event of divorce, regardless of jurisdiction. Dead silence. Liam's lawyer grabbed the paper. This is archaic. A 1712 treaty? This will never hold in a U.S. court. Read the bottom, Emily said. Arthur continued. As per the International Sovereign Assets Treaty signed by the United States in 1954, U.S. courts agree to uphold the marital property laws of sovereign nations regarding acting heads of state or their direct heirs. Emily leaned forward. Every word she spoke next was a nail in a coffin. You didn't sign a loan agreement, Liam. You signed a postnuptial agreement bound by international law. I protected my family's legacy from day one, just in case you turned out to be exactly who you are. She stood up. You don't get $50 million. You don't get your job. And because you attempted to extort a foreign head of state, which is what I am now, this transcript goes to the district attorney. Vance looked at his lawyers. They were pale, silent, beaten. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and looked down at Liam with pure disgust. You signed it without reading it. That's all he said. Then he walked out. His lawyers followed like whipped dogs. Jessica didn't even glance back. Liam sat alone at that enormous table. Just him and a 300-year-old piece of paper that proved he'd signed away a kingdom because he couldn't be bothered to read. Emily paused at the door. You were right about one thing, Liam. I was pretending for 7 years. She looked back at him. I was pretending you were a good man. I'm glad I can finally stop. The door closed. What followed was swift and merciless. Not because Emily orchestrated his destruction. She didn't have to. Liam destroyed himself. The story leaked within hours. His face trended online under the hashtag #ThePauperPrince. Every headhunter in the city sent the same reply. We cannot represent you at this time. His friends vanished. Jessica changed her number. The severance check got frozen. The Patek Philippe watch bought him 2 months in a basement apartment next to a train track in New Jersey. He went from corner offices to instant noodles in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Emily didn't just run Vanguard Global, she transformed it. Launched a scholarship fund named after the diner where she'd waitressed. Fired every executive who'd enabled Liam's arrogance. She was fierce and fair, and the press couldn't get enough of her. 6 months later, on a freezing November night, Emily was leaving Vanguard Tower when Thomas, her bodyguard, stopped her. "There's a man at the service entrance. Been waiting 3 hours. Says he knows you." She found him huddled under a leaking awning, shivering, soaked through, wearing a thin windbreaker and worn-out sneakers. He looked 10 years older. The jaw was still sharp, but the arrogance behind it had been hollowed out completely. "Emily," his voice cracked. "I can't pay my heating bill. I applied everywhere. They all recognized me. I'm done." Tears mixed with rain on his face. "You won. Is it enough? Can you just make one phone call? Tell them I'm not a monster." She looked at him for a long time. She felt pity rise in her chest, and she let it pass. Because pity wasn't what he needed. He'd been handed everything his whole life and learned nothing from any of it. "I didn't destroy you, Liam. You destroyed yourself. You built a life on arrogance and acted surprised when it collapsed." She reached into her bag. Not for a checkbook, not for a phone. She pulled out a crumpled business card. "My family runs a disaster relief warehouse in Newark. Hard labor, 12-hour shifts, minimum wage, lifting crates and sorting supplies." He stared at the card. "You want me to move boxes?" "I want you to learn what it means to work," she said. "You told me I was small because I used my hands. You thought you were better than the people who serve you. If you want to survive, you need to become one of them." She dropped the card into his shaking hand. "Ask for the foreman. Tell him Emily sent you. And Liam, don't be late. They dock pay for tardiness." She walked away, got into her limousine, watched through the tinted glass as he stood in the rain, staring at that card like it was written in a language he was just beginning to learn. Then slowly, he put it in his pocket and started walking toward the train station. 1 year later, the Cathedral of Valoria, trumpets echoing off stone walls older than memory, stained glass painting the floor in violet and gold, millions watching worldwide. Emily knelt before the altar. The Archbishop placed the crown of the lion on her head. "I present to you Her Royal Highness, Grand Duchess Emily of Valoria." Bells rang across the valley. 3,000 miles away, in a cramped break room in a New Jersey warehouse, a small TV was playing the broadcast. Liam sat at a plastic table in a neon yellow safety vest, eating a sandwich wrapped in foil. His hands were calloused, his nails were dirty, his back ached from moving crates since dawn. A coworker glanced at the screen. "Man, look at her. Must be nice. Bet she never worked a day in her life." Liam paused, crumpled up his foil. "Actually," he said quietly, "she worked harder than anyone I've ever known." "You know her?" The guy laughed. Liam stood up, turned off the TV. "No, I used to know someone who looked like her, but I never really knew her at all." He walked back onto the warehouse floor to earn his $12 an hour, left the queen to her kingdom. And for the first time in his miserable, grasping, blind little life, he finally understood what he'd been holding and what he'd thrown away. Not a woman, not a fortune, a lesson. That true royalty was never about crowns or diamonds or silk dresses. It was about how you treat people when you believe nobody important is watching. Emily always knew that. Liam learned it the hard way. Most people do.